Okay, so now we are ready to start draping. We're going to start with our center front, and we're going to pin our lengthwise grain all the way down the center front of our dress form, making sure that we are lining up our waist lines and our bust lines. So you can start with the waist, you can sort of pin that up out of the way. So you want to try to line up this lengthwise grain line that you pulled with your center front line, and same with your cross at the waist. Now I'm going to pin right at that intersection, and then I'm going to anchor that by pinning in a perpendicular direction. Okay. So now I'm going to line up the rest of this lengthwise grain with the center front and pin towards the right side, or towards our drape. All right, so now we're going to work our way up to the bust line. Whenever you're draping, you want to make sure you're using a very light hand. You don't want to be pulling and tugging at your muslin, or else that's going to mess up your grain lines. It's going to start to warp your entire drape. So what I'm doing to find the center front is just sort of smoothing up that lengthwise grain and feeling for the seam of the dress form. You can also sort of see through your grain line pull where that seam will lay. Okay, so here we are at the bust line. We want to pin that in place the same way we pinned our waist. So we're going to pin towards our drape. We're going to go ahead and anchor that in with a perpendicular pin. And then we can pin up the rest of the block. So this bust line here is a little loose, and it is a little high on our bust line tape. So unfortunately, I'm going to go ahead and unpin between the waist and the bust, smooth that up a little bit, and repin. That's a lot better. So we're going to start at the widest point of our front panel, which is our bust line. So I'm going to start by slowly smoothing that cross grain along our bust line. And since we had to adjust the waistline here, or the bust line here, in accordance to the waist, the bust line shifted up to the top of our bust line tape. So now as I drape this bust, I'm going to keep this up along the top of that tape. I'm going to pin right on that apex line. You can feel for the ridge of that seam. Pin down, there we go. So that's nice and smooth there. And then we can start smoothing the muslin from the center front and start to move over towards the princess seam. Now as you can see, as we do that, it adds some pulling here and here because it does not want to follow the contour of the bust. So how we fix that is by clipping into the muslin to allow it to sort of break and ease into that shape. So I'm going to come to the under bust line and clip in just a little bit. And whenever you do this, you want to make sure that you're not clipping past that princess line there. I'm also going to clip a little bit off on the side, allow us to get a little bit closer, and the same down here. And this right here is why we add that extra measurement when we're measuring for our blocks. Okay, so I have some clips in here. I'm just going to start smoothing over. Now that's looking a lot better. But you can tell that it wants me to keep clipping along the side of this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But first, I'm going to pin along what we have clipped already. Now as you're smoothing the panel from the center front, you want to keep an eye on your grain lines. If you go to smooth and you pull too far, you can see that that grain line starts dipping down a little bit. So you want to keep everything as straight and smooth as possible. And this is why I say to use a smooth hand, so you're not tugging and pulling, but rather just smoothly laying your hand across the bodice. Now this keeps dipping down, so I'm going to put a pin up here to keep that grain nice and neat. So that's nice and smooth. We'll fix this in just a little bit as we start cutting up. So now I'm going to continue cutting down and across until I reach our waistline.
I have too many pins already.
Clip a little bit further into this line here to see if we can eliminate this extra ease right here. See? It's a little bit smoother there. Okay, so we can see this is pulling along the muslin here. That's because we have to release some of this along the grain line, which is the most narrow part of our panels. I'm going to actually clip from the bottom here. I think we can actually measure over, pin into our princess seam here. Clip. I'm going to clip right along this cross grain line to allow that waistline to accurately separate and spread. Smooth. And now when you're getting to this part, you want to really make sure that this cross grain that you pulled right here for the waist is lining up with the bottom of your waist tape. And right here, you may be able to see that it's coming up from the bottom of the waist tape by about 1/8 of an inch. And with a regular drape, that may not be a big deal, but this is a foundation that's supposed to be fitting as close to the body as possible. And also, we're in couture. We have to drape the best we can. So I'm going to go ahead and unpin this. I'm going to see if I can smooth down that extra 1/8 of an inch to make sure that waistline lines up precisely. So there we have our waistline, nice and smooth across. Just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and give that an anchor too. So now we have this ease here. Just unpin that, smooth down, pin again. I can pin up to our waistline from the bottom of our hip. There we go. So now I'd say the bottom of this panel 1 is all finished. So now we gotta work with this ease right in here and sort of smooth that out. Now as I'm smoothing this over, I can feel that there's a really tight grain right here that it wants to pull. And I'm still about a 1/4 inch away from my princess line at my clips here. So I'm gonna clip just a tiny bit into that grain line. Just like that. Let's see if that helped. There we go. So now we can smooth that down into the princess, pin at the underbust, come down, and pin again. Now, so I don't push all of the ease down into the waist, I'm going to start by working up again. Let's see if we can't get this as smooth as possible. So I'm going to throw an extra pin in right here just to keep this little bubble of ease from popping up. There we go. Look at that. Smooth this down in here. Pin. Things are looking pretty good. Nice and smooth. So now we can go back to our bust line. See, it's pulling quite a bit here. So I'm going to start smoothing this up. Yeah, the top of this bust does not want to agree with the center front here. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is that usually you'll want to tape the top of your foundation line. Now, when it comes to the sides and the back, the top of your foundation will likely land right in line with your bust line at the back. But at the front, that's not the case because we want to cover the bust after we push it up. So I'm going to go ahead and unpin the top of my center front here up to my bust level. Pull that down, and I'm going to tape in the approximate height that we want for our foundation. So I'm going to start at the center front bust line, curve up over the bust. I'm going to come back down and meet at the intersection of the side seam and the bust line, nice and neat. Now you want to try to keep this curve here as soft as possible, so we can go ahead and smooth that out here. All right, so here we have the top of our cup, and we can use this for reference as we're draping the top of our center front. So we can start by clipping off any of this extra muslin that we have up here above our bust tape. So it's just going to get in the way. Okay. Get rid of Now I'm going to clip down towards the bust tape that we just placed. First, I'm going to pin that up there. Get it out of the way. Do the same for the princess. There we go. Okay. Now we can start to play with this ease here. Try to get this all smoothed out with the ease laying either beyond the side of the princess seam or beyond the top of our foundation. Now, one of the good things about clipping into your muslin is not only that it allows your muslin to expand over curves, it also allows it to collapse over itself, sort of like this. And that will allow you to get over the negative curve or the concave of the top of the breast.
So, I have this smoothed out here.
I'm going to clip a little closer into that princess line. Overlap right here, about 1.25 inches below the apex. Give that a pin. Looks like everything is just about as smooth as it could be. Now, if you're clipping into the sides of your block and wondering if it's okay that you're clipping into the seam allowance of your garment, don't worry about that. After we mark this, we're going to lay it flat, and we can always trace our lines onto another piece of muslin, add the seam allowance then, and cut it back out for a mock-up, which is what we will be doing after we finish our drape. I'm just going to go ahead and finish up any extra pins that I may have missed. Smooth anything out that needs to be smoothed. Everything's nice and smooth. Now you can go and grab a sharp pencil and begin marking your princess lines, the bottom of your foundation, and the top of your foundation. Now, if you find that you've clipped past the princess seam, that's okay. Just go ahead and trace your line over that clip, and then we can fix that when everything is flattened out. Now remember, the bottom of our line, go ahead and trace the bottom of our draping tape. Now we already have our center front marked by our cross grain, our lengthwise grain, sorry. And we have our waistline marked by our cross grain and our bust line by that cross grain as well. We can go ahead and mark our draping tape.
The top. Nice. Okay.
And there we have it, our center front panel. You can go ahead and unpin